Hey guys, welcome to our Astrolife. My name is Abdur, and today I'll be showing you how to image the International Space Station when it's transiting the moon. So just going to pull this up over here. There we go. So this is a picture that I took recently of the International Space Station going in front of the lunar surface. So you can see a zoomed in panel over here. You can see these solar panels on the International Space Station. And it was about 600 kilometers away at the time, and the entire transit lasted about 1.1 seconds. So now these are some of the videos that I have available on my channel. If you're an absolute beginner and haven't tried imaging the International Space Station before, I recommend starting with the first video, tips and settings. In this particular video, this is part 5, so we'll mainly be discussing how to image the International Space Station, a brief overview, and mainly how to process those images, because that's usually the harder part. So let's get started. Now, the first thing you need to do is you need to find out when a transit of the International Space Station is going to happen, or sorry, when it's going to transit the lunar surface. So to do that, you go to a website called transitfinder.com, and on that website you can enter your location, and you can find the times when the International Space Station is going to be passing in front of the sun or the moon from your location. So you can get more details about how to use that website on one of the previous I believe part 4 solar transit that talks about it as well, so you can take a look at that for more details about how to use this Transit Finder website. But since that's been covered already, we won't go over it again in this video. Now, the camera that I was using was the Fuji XT2 camera, and I was using it with my Celestron C8 Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope. But you can use pretty much any telescope or any camera for this. You can even use, if you have a DSLR camera like a Canon T5i or any of those cameras, or even an Astro camera, you can use any of those. I recommend taking videos because you can get about 30 or 60 frames per second in video, and trying to time the pictures is very, very hard. So I definitely recommend taking video. And one very important thing if you're trying to image the lunar transit of the International Space Station is to set your exposure time pretty fast, about 1/500th of a second or faster. And that way the International Space Station will not look like a blur, because it moves very, very fast. It's traveling at about 27,600 kilometers per hour. So you want to freeze that action, so set your shutter speed or exposure time to 1/500th of a second or faster, and then adjust your gain or your ISO until the lunar surface is properly exposed. So you don't want the craters or any of the really bright regions to be overexposed. Then once that's done, you can focus your telescope on the lunar edge or a crater, and then you prepare for the transit of the International Space Station. And I recommend starting the capture about 30 seconds before the ISS actually passes in front of the moon. That way, if something goes wrong, you'll have time to make corrections, and that will also make sure that if the International Space Station is not visible right before it transits the moon, for example, if it's in the shadow, you won't miss the transit, because sometimes the forecast is not very accurate. Okay, so once you've captured the data, you're going to use a free software called PIPP to stabilize the video, and then you can save the frames with the International Space Station in them as TIFF files to create a time lapse. And you can download GIMP, which is a free software just like Photoshop, except GIMP is actually free. You can download the beta version of that, version 2.99.2, and you can use that. The other versions at the link, 2.994 or 2.10 or any of the other ones won't work. For some reason, only version 2.99.2 of the beta that's available at this link over here will work to do this at the moment. So then you can combine the frames with the International Space Station in them in GIMP version 2.992 or Photoshop if you have Photoshop to create an image. So what we're going to do now is we will go back to the video. So this right over here was the video that I had taken. So okay, so this was the video that we had taken. This video was in .mov file, which is what a lot of regular cameras use. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to convert this video into AVI format or SCR format or TIFF or any of those ones. In our case, we'll be using the TIFF format because we want individual images. And we'll also stabilize the video because, as you saw, the video was quite shaky because I moved the mount. So we're going to open the software called PIPP. I already have it downloaded. So if you don't have this software, you'll have to download it. Just search for PIPP on Google. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop this video that I had taken into PIPP and move this over here. So these are the settings that I'll use. You don't select anything over here, just select this video. Now it tells you that your frame rate was 29.97 frames per second, total of 990 frames. In my case, I was shooting in 4K, so it gives you the size. You go to the input panel up here where my mouse is, click on the input panel. If you're using a DSLR or a mirrorless camera like I was, then you uncheck this debar raw image files. But if you're using an astro camera like the ASI 1600, like a color astro camera, ASI 1600 MC, ASI 178 MC, any of those color astro cameras, then you check this option, so select this option. But if you're using just a black and white monochrome camera or a DSLR or a mirrorless camera or any of those cameras, uncheck this option. Then from input frame color or monochrome, you will select color or monochrome. If you're using a black and white only camera, select monochrome. If you're using a color camera, select color. In our case, our video here is clearly in color, so we will select color. Then go to the next tab, processing options. You don't need anything over here. Make sure this monochrome conversion is not checked. You do not want to convert to anything, so leave this unchecked. Frame stabilization mode, select object planetary. And make sure this is not selected or any of these other options. You don't want object detection. You don't want to crop or resize the frame. So leave all of these other options unchecked. Just make sure that frame stabilization mode is set to object or planetary. And next is quality options. Leave that as it is. Animation options. Play all frames in forward order. That's selected by default. Leave that as it is. Output options. Now in our case here, we are going to select TIFF format. If you want to make a video, you can usually select AVI, but we will select TIFF because we want individual frames. So we'll select TIFF for that. And this is the final. So, oh yeah, one more thing we need to do, because we started taking the video about 30 seconds before the ISS actually passed in front of the moon. What we're going to do is we're going to only select the frames that had the International Space Station passing in front of the moon, just because we don't need 1,000 frames. So we'll go back to the input tab over here. And instead of having all 990 frames, what I'm going to do is in the input tab, I will, under input frame range, I'm going to click limit frame range. And from what I remember from watching the video, I can estimate when the International Space Station... I can estimate when the International Space Station passed in front of the moon. So let's say right over here. Okay, so roughly at second 27. So second 27 to 29. So what we can do is, based on what time it passed by, we can estimate. So let's say second 27. We know our frame rate, which was 29.97 frames per second. So that'll tell us roughly, starting from frame 809, we can go to, so 29 second was when it was done passing, times 29.97 frames per second, so till about frame 870. Now, since I've looked at the frames more closely, I already know that in this case, in PIPP, I need to only take frames 820 to frame 841. But you might have to experiment a few times to get the right frames, or you can basically go from frame 800 to 900. In my case, for example, it's going to depend on how many frames your video had and when the ISS passed in front of the moon. But from a bit of trial and error, this is what I found it was for mine. And you can always delete the frames that don't have the International Space Station in them as well. So this is what I'm going to select in this particular case. Now, we're going to go back to do processing, and we'll click start processing. Now, PIPP is going through all of the frames in my video, and it's going to select the frames that I had selected, which was frame 820 to 841. It's just going to select those 21 frames. In your case, it may be more or less frames, and depending on when the ISS passed in front of the moon in your video, it'll be a different number. It could be frame 500 to 600, or it'll depend on your particular video. So this is almost done. It might take a few seconds. Okay, there we go. So as soon as PIPP is done processing this video, it's going to create a folder right over here. That's the one. And the frames that we had selected will be output into this folder in TIFF format. So we can take a look at the frames first. Okay, they look pretty good. So we can close PIPP. So basically PIPP took the video and output all of these frames. So if we double click on one of the frames, right there you can see the International Space Station passing through. Now I'm going to hit the next button, and you can see it moving over the surface of the moon. You can see the solar panels on the side right there, and you can see it passing right through. Now the movement in this case was because I accidentally shook the tripod, because I was using a photo tripod and I was manually tracking the moon at 2000 millimeters. Not the best idea. It's better to use a tracking mount, but we can work with this as well. So now that we've used PIPP to create these TIFF files, we're going to download GIMP if you haven't already downloaded that. So GIMP is a free software, and we'll need beta build version 2.992 of GIMP in this case. For some reason 2.994 or any of the other ones like the 2.10, which is their stable version, don't work. Only version 2.992 of the beta is able to do what we need it to do. And you can download that at this link that will be given in the description. So you can just click on the description under this video once I upload it, and you'll be able to download it from there. So we can click so basically click on the link in the description, and it'll take you to this page that I'm just going to open up over here. And this is what you want: GIMP-2.99.2-setup.x. So this is what it is for Windows. So you'll click on that and it will download that for you. I've already downloaded it, so I don't need that. But once you've downloaded that, click on that, install it, and once you've installed it, then you can open that up. And what we're going to do is open up GIMP 2.992. This is the one over here. Oh, there we go. So just going to launch that. Takes a second to get started. Okay, here we go. So what we're going to do is File, Open as Layers. There we go. So we navigate to where the files are stored. Now, as we decided we were going to use every fifth file, so what we can do is, actually I'll just start from over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. So we just select every fifth file. So how you do that is you click on the first one, hold down the control button on Windows, and I assume command button on the Mac, then while you're holding the control or command button down, click on the next one, then click on the next one, so that way you can select multiple files. So once you've selected those files, you can click open. Okay, so now that our files are open, on the right hand panel down here, they are all open as layers, so all the files that we had selected. What we're going to do now is we are going to select all of these files. So we're going to click on the first one, hold down the shift key on Windows and click on the last one, so that will select all of these files. Now once all of the files are selected, we are going to go to this mode option over here and click on normal, scroll down, click on darken only. When we click on darken only, if your tracking was good, you'll see the ISS in front of the moon, and the moon will look sharp and pretty good. So at that point you'll be done. You can export your file. So you'll just go to File, Export, select the file format that you want to save it as. You can click down here and select all the different file formats. But in my case, I'm not going to save it yet because my tracking was so bad and the image was shaking at that time. I need to do a little bit more extra work because if you look at the moon back here, it looks quite blurry. So to fix this, in my special case, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go up to the top left corner over here, right click on this rectangle and click ellipse select. Then I'm going to select all of these International Space Stations over here. So if I want to select multiple, what I'm going to do is I hold down the shift button. So then I can select multiples. I just drag and drop this ellipse over each of them, so that selects multiple ones. Now once I've selected all of these, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the right side layers panel over here, and I will deselect this middle one, and to do that I hold down CTRL, I left click on it, and that deselects this one, but all the other layers are still selected, so just deselect the middle layer. Now go back to the image and right click and click select and invert selection. So now everything else is selected besides the ISS, and just hit the delete button. There you go. So now it got rid of the blurry background that I had there for a while because of my horrible tracking. You likely won't have to do this step, but just in case you also have really bad tracking like I did, this should fix that issue. So now you can see that the ISS is looking pretty good in front of the moon over there. So what we can do now is we can just go to image and merge visible layers and merge. There we go. So it's good to go. That's your image, and now we can save it. File, export as, and you can select what you want to export as. You can leave it as TIF if you want to do any further editing to it. If this is all you want and you are just ready to save it, you can save it as a JPEG image. Just going to move this window up here, and I can export it now. Oh yeah, you can name it something here. So I will name it ISS. There we go. Export that. Export. And we can take a look at it right over here. There we go. So you can see the moon in the background, the International Space Station transiting the moon over here. And yeah, not too difficult to do. If you have Photoshop, you can do the same thing, probably in fewer steps, but if you don't have Photoshop, this is definitely easy enough to do in GIMP. So now that that's done, we can close that out. And now you know how to process the data. And this is the result that I had with a lot more frames that I used. And you can also zoom in on the International Space Station right over here. You can see a couple of the major craters. And perfect. So you can also check out the other videos I have on this channel for more tips and tricks. And you can like and subscribe to be notified whenever I upload a new video. And these are some of the other videos I have on the topic of imaging the International Space Station. So thank you very much for watching, and have a good rest of your day.